Welcome everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of BizWiz Season 2. BizWiz is basically a series of live sessions where we talk to small business owners and upcoming DTC brands. And today we have with us a very special guest. We have with us Ziba, founder of Mati Cha. She's here to talk to us about how she's basically handled her family business and how she's sort of managed to transition it into a sustainable business also at the same time, while also handling her family business, which originally stood for what it was. So welcome Ziba. Please everybody join me in giving Ziba a very warm welcome. Click on the heart button over there and welcome her. Over to you, Ziba. Please tell us about yourself and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Nikhil. So, like he said, I am the founder of Mati Cha, along with, of course, it's a family-run farm. So, of course, with me, I have members of my family who are really, making this farm a farm-stable brand. We've started this as Mati Cha during the lockdown. So, before this, since the 1980s, we, of course, we have our family farm. Since the last few years, we've delved into permaculture, into beekeeping and all of those things. And now during the pandemic, we were at our farm, and that's when we really got the opportunity to rebrand, get back in farm, start Mati Cha. Before this, we were not at our fresh. We were really selling mangoes, which is our main crop, like our mango orchards is something we always supplied mangoes to friends and family and different contacts in the city. So during the lockdown, we really got the opportunity to start Mati Cha, because we've always grown our own healthy and different things around us. We have our own mangoes that we probably started a farm-to-table brand, but with e-commerce and everything right after, like during the pandemic, all of these things. So September of 2020 is when we started Mati Cha.
Wonderful. That's lovely. So I'm actually very intrigued and interested to know. I know that when your family itself runs a business, you're sort of you're brought up in a certain way where you're either automatically a business person, or you're just not a business person because you've just seen that since your childhood, and you just know that you don't want to do that, or that is the only thing that you know how to do. It's either of the two things. So, I mean, how has your background been? Like, did you always want to become, like an entrepreneur, or like you knew that you'd be taking care of family business, or was this something that you decided at a later point?
Yeah, so like you said, you either love it or you hate it. That is so true. So for me, at least, the farm has always, like for me, members of my family have not just been into farming, because that was like mangoes, everything for crop that we were doing. And so everyone in my family has different professions, but something that really brought us all together was the farm, because I think that's something that we've always loved. I have spent many summer vacations at the many weekends as a child, like when I was very young, and when like a lot of my friends would go out. Of course, my parents really took me out to different places, but even more so, like that was one place that I would go very often, and at times I wouldn't enjoy it as much, especially in summers. At times it wouldn't be with the heat and electricity, like power cuts and everything. It wasn't like something I would be like, okay, why are we going there again? At times when I was very young. But later on, at least when I grew older and we had mangoes coming in, at least from the farm, mangoes is something that really brought me closer to the farm, because it's really pretty and really nice to be at. But mangoes is something really started all of these, like everything for me, because during like the summer vacations and I was free, I would sort mangoes and do everything, sell all of those mangoes, and that's really something that really got me interested in, say, like develop some sort of a business acumen in me. I knew, okay, we were selling at such and such price, and my dad would really involve me in setting the prices and things like that. I felt like I was involved in all those things. So that is something that's how it started. And then, of course, I have studied economics at my bachelor's in economics and commerce from St. Xavier's. So I did have a certain, I did studies that helped me personally, helped me a little. So later after that, because I was surrounded by the farms around me, like 30 go there so often, I know like, okay, what the farmers' issues are, things like the APMs, everything to access to markets. That's when I also did research, and I'm also now currently in my master's. I'm doing my master's thesis also on the access to markets for farmers.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Those things really made me aware of the reality. Like, I went across Konkan and I did like things like farm insurances to all of those things, really. All of that, so that like my academic knowledge and my research experience, plus my real love for the place. And like during the pandemic, I lived there for 2 years, and I'm really like, that's the longest I've lived there. And now, even for 15 days, I'm here. I'm like, okay, I really wish to go back.
Right.
So that is something that really got me interested into everything. And during the pandemic is when we really were like, okay, how do we sell the mangoes? And we did different things. That was the year that we sold all across Mumbai, Kalyan, and then we were like, okay, we can take this further. And that's when we got all like little things up from around us. So now we work with different beekeepers, local farmers, and people, the community around us. It really brought them together. So local self-help groups, and we're growing our own haldi. But now we also have a women self-help group with us who's growing haldi. So it's all like turmeric with us. So it's all of that. That's just what like a little bit about why I'm interested in it and how this came about.
Right. All of it sounds lovely.
Everyone in my family, they love it. All of them also love it. So it's about everything, like everyone's efforts.
Yeah, it actually sounds great. But I think I missed out on one very important question that I personally also wanted to ask you is how did you what does Mati Cha exactly mean? Like, where did that come from? And, what does it mean? I'm pretty sure our viewers also must be interested in knowing what exactly it means.
Yeah, it's like a very important question that really comes to people's mind first, like when we hear or we are to pop up or anything. So Mati Cha is, so we are from Maharashtra. Our farm is in Raigad. Our native place also in Maharashtra itself. Mati Cha, we were really thinking about like all small businesses. Everything. Of course, the name is the most important thing. So we were pondering about it, and we came about like, okay, from the soil. So we were like thinking on the lines of from the soil. We thought about mitti se, but that's all. Those lines, and that's why how we started on Mati Cha, because Mati Cha means from the soil, Marathi. So it brings together where we're from and what we stand.
That's lovely. I actually should have guessed that, considering I know a little bit Marathi, but I thought maybe there's something else to it. But I think that's beautiful. It's very simple. It's very to the point, and it's lovely. Yeah, I mean, you've told me about the, how it started off with mangoes, and, that is where you came into the business and you sort of understood that, okay, this is what is working for us, and you basically got an all-round understanding of how you can probably run a business, of course, with the help of your family members, but that's where, the ball started rolling, basically. So, from there on, where did the idea of, sustainability or, we have to sort of give back to the environment and take care of the environment, where did that thought come in from?
So I think the thought of sustainability, or at least being conscious, I would say, about the environment and all these things, has always been at the back of my mind. Like personally, it's maybe at least school or even things like around my family. That's something that has always been important to us. It sounds like, okay, like recycling or the way we, plastic waste and everything. So that is something that we've always been conscious of. In fact, waste is something that I personally, like if I see people throwing around waste around, I would really, as a child, why is so much waste being thrown in different places. I, in fact, around 11, when I was in my 8th standard, I really made a small ad flip for a contest that was around using a carbon in your car. So you don't throw things out, but you use a carbon, and that really I got awarded as a national and everything. So it has always been something that I've been concerned about it. Even for example, plastic waste, little plastic PET bottles that are used in events and everything. I'm like, why are they using so much of that plastic and everything? And likewise for even my co-founders or other people from my family, like my aunt and stuff, they've also been very conscious. And even at the farm, right from the beginning, we don't have waste management, much like the entire people in Maharashtra. We don't have waste collection that happens. Even in major towns, even if waste is collected, it's not processed or segregated. It's taken up with other people. So there's no waste management that happens. So we've always, the kitchen waste that comes in we segregated as per like cooked, raw, and everything. We do process it. We do make our own compost. That has always happened. So things like that, like we've always taken, like for example, we would also segregate all our wastes, even at the farm, right? And take it back to the city. We could recycle whatever and reuse a lot of, like for example, if we are using say glass bottles. If you come to the farm, you use a lot of glass bottles as lamps, things like that. So the aspect of being conscious, I think it's not like we're perfect, but we've always been, consciously making an effort towards, improving. It's not about the best alternative for things. It's always been about like, okay, what's the better alternative and how can we make a slight difference at least. So at least people even around us who work with us at the farm, they're also collecting their waste, segregating it, composting it around us. So that is something that's always been important to us. And more so once we started Matisha, we were like, okay, now we're not going to use, because if we are starting an e-commerce brand, we're not going to use plastic bottles, because that's maybe the easiest way. Like a lot of honey, because honey is one of our major products now, of course. So a lot of honey is packaged in plastic bottles.
Right.
Because it's easier, and I completely understand, because it's easier to send it all across the country. The packaging, everything is easier. But right from the beginning, we've started with, and it's easier, I feel, once you start with that, it's easier, because we started with glass bottles. All our, like, we have our little preserves, everything is in glass bottles. That's like, even otherwise, in our other packaging, we use corrugated sheets and open instead of CMR. It is but it's easier now. That's our, like, we didn't know it any other way. We didn't use bubble wrap in our thing, so we were just like, we looked at those alternatives and used it. So I think for newer brands or newer people who are just starting out in e-commerce, I think it's easier, or at least I feel like they should look into better alternatives for it, whether it be say glass bottles or anything. But it depends on what you are doing.
True, and I think you make a very good point. Like in terms of, especially because the idea for us also is for our viewers and anybody who would want to start their business is we'd like to inculcate that, that sort of thought that, that you, like, as you were saying, the aspect of being conscious is something that is important. Whether or not you're doing it perfectly is something that, you see at a later point. You eventually get perfect, or maybe you never get perfect. That's something that's left to be seen. But as long as you're conscious and, you're taking those necessary steps, I think that's the important thing to do. So I wanted to understand a little bit about, especially because you had transitioned into, sort of like a sustainable model, or, transitioned into, so there might have been changes, and obviously there might have been challenges also, considering, you're working with so many other people. So they might be used to, like, it might sound really dumb, but, coming from, I'm somebody who knows nothing. So, if somebody is working with, let's say, plastic, they'll be working, the handling of plastic will be different from the handling of, let's say, glass, so those kind of things to even talk to the team about, or, if you're working with a community of workers, telling them that, we're going to use these products or these kind of products going forward, you'll have to sort of change this. So in terms of the transition, I know that, of course, it's not 100% thing, but how long did that transition take until you, saw some substantial change maybe? So, if you could probably talk to us a little bit about that.
So at least for us, at least in terms of sustainability and maybe using more eco-friendly things, like for us, at least in terms of things that we are selling, all of those things, a lot of it started post. So we've started with a way more eco-friendly, but things like, okay, we've still had the farm and we've still been doing things. We've always had that at the back of mind. Like I was telling you, always, done those things. But things like, okay, when we are now, those people are using, for example, to tie things. They've used, say, a plastic suktal that is called, like, I don't know, like a plastic rope. Okay.
Right.
Instead of that, so twine, right? So tying things around them, twines that are used. So they're green or blue and color. So, and that's used not just, for example, for tracking or tying things up, but also in other things, like if you're tying a bundle of, say, like any green veggies and all of those things are also used. And so that was one thing that the first instance is okay. Now at times, they would just get it from the market and they would use that in different things. So we were like, then we completely got lots of twine, lots of those brown sutal that you have that is all completely eco-friendly. So we got lots of that. And so then we were like, okay. And then also was that we realized about them and the different practices that they were already taking. So for example, we have lots of coconut growing in our farm. So we always had from the coconut leaves, you get little long string that you use for goods,
right? Yeah.
From the leaves, and the leaves dry out to make a lot of goods. So we were like, okay, so in that also we were like, okay, let's completely use those entire outdoors. Let's not get any new, say, any plastic or alternatives, because we have other goods and stuff. So because at least in the outdoors we can use, right? So there were different things, at least in that sense, but we didn't sort of have, we moved towards, like, for example, we started with, we started an e-commerce business, we started with having sustainable and alternative brand. But I think just starting with that is also not easy, right? Because having now, once we started shipping orders, we had all sorts of issues about how parcels were being handled and things were breaking.
Right.
So it's very disheartening for someone to really receive a nice bottle of honey. They're very excited. And, at times they would get the smell and everything of like nice pilsy honey. But when they open, okay, it's completely broken and shattered. That is why they're getting all those things. So those little things, I think, that also, for example, for brands who are, say, moving towards different alternatives, there are lots of setbacks that happen in terms of, now for us it was those glass bottles breaking, and at times I've sent a second glass bottle to the same person and it broke again, and it was even more bad, and I felt even more bad, and those people were like, okay, no, you send it in a plastic bottle to us, we will not tell anyone, right?
Yeah.
So it was, right? It happened, but then the third time, like, we would send some little goodies with them, like, okay, we apologize if it has happened, but here, this is your parcel. And then from that, we understand, okay, we have to package it, maybe we're using 2 rolls to wrap around the bottle, we have to use 3 or 4. So those kind of things. And also, like you said, in transition, now, for example, people have been using different things all throughout, like in their lives, not even for example, with me, but it's just around the use. So it's just that when the first thing that they use for a certain thing is not very like a good alternative. So that is something like, okay, now everyone knows, and now they really understand how things work. For example, always different. It's been like a year or two of, people, even in the people who work with us now, we are into waste management. They tell, okay, now come, let's show everyone in the village also how they can manage their waste better, how they should not, throw plastic out. And we've been, of course, interacting with the community and everything in that regard. So it's just the aspect of, it is a slow process. It's not like you will have setbacks, but I feel like even if you're trying, I think you should, it's important to try different aspects, get things around it. It does happen. That is something that, and also, like, for example, you might feel like you have to use a certain alternative that does not suit, but you can still, try and transition towards other things. Like, for example, we were using a lot of plastic tape right in the beginning, and that didn't sit well with us, but we had to use it. We were looking into tapes and all of those things. So I feel like if you are looking into that, and if you're not perfect, and nobody is, I think even for us, if you're calling ourselves a sustainable brand, it's just like you're conscious of the environment, keep reiterating that thing. And anyone who wants to, if someone's watching who has business and wants to, you can take a small step. There were people like, even we were using corrugated wrapping, and we were like, okay, no, woodwood is better. We tried, having, now we use both. We use woodwood and we use corrugated. So we're always there to listen, and once you're talking and, interacting with different people, you come across much more like different alternatives. So it is just a matter of how it's just a matter of liking to try, going for better things, all that things.
Yeah, I think it circles back to the same thing about, an individual being conscious about whatever they're doing. You start with one small thing and you just keep building on that, and eventually, like as you said, and as even I believe, I don't think anybody's 100%, but as long as the thought is there. You interestingly mentioned about when you were shipping out glass bottles, and they were either breaking during shipping, and during when they were in transit and stuff like that. So I mean, of course, there are these logistical challenges with transitioning from like a regular business to a sustainable business, or like from regular practices to sustainable practices. But like the financial aspect also does come into play, right? Like, because obviously if you're telling me that you're sending them another bottle, I don't think you can charge them for that. You can't tell them that what, please, we'll probably charge you a little extra for shipping, considering we're a small business, because that's how it does work. If you're starting out, you will sort of run into these kind of issues. So how did you manage that, or like those aspects of that particular challenge?
For example, it's definitely cost is a major aspect, not just about things breaking, because that is say the initial aspect. Now we don't have, like, I don't have parcel breaking or any of those things happening like for the last 6-7 months or even more. It was just like in the 2020, 2021 big weeks when we had some issues with that sort of.
Right.
But so that aspect of cost is still something that you learn, and you bear the cost of the, at least the initial teething issues. But I feel like, of course, one should really understand that when you are looking for sustainable alternatives, or alternatives like glass instead of plastic, and all of those things instead of CMR,
right,
at times the expense. And I mean, not just like, for example, the glass bottle is more expensive. Anyone knows that a glass bottle is more expensive than a plastic bottle.
Correct.
It is more heavier, hence more shipping. So you will have to pay, like, of course, have a shipping cost is higher. All of those things really do factor in, and it is a major thing. But I feel like right now, that is also something. For example, the weight of the parcel determines the shipping cost, and we do have a certain shipping cost as per weight for every bottle, and that is transferred across to the customer. Like in most cases, the shipping cost is borne by the customer.
Right.
But of course, and so that is something, of course, that happens. Like, if the shipping cost is high, and maybe the aspect of, because our packaging cost and everything is higher, it does factor in cost and price. But the whole thing about now, how do we, for example, there's someone who's like, okay, if I switch to glass, because that's the thing that I'm thinking about, like, even otherwise, there is anything that's more sustainable. Okay, my price goes up by a certain amount, and I have to take competition and all of those things, like, as a business into mind, because let's face it, that is important for everything. Okay, I'm selling it at a price, now I have to add extra price to it.
Right.
And how do I sustain myself after that? Like, how will it affect my customers? It is definitely. But as somebody who has that in place, as somebody who maybe all of those things, maybe the shipping cost of our products is higher, say, than someone else's product. But I have, like, always there are people who are like, oh, this is such a pretty bottle that is coming. Oh, it's good that it's a glass bottle. There are lots of people now who are more conscious. It does pay off. People do like you being conscious about the environment, especially now because we're in the food space, and of course, it being honey and farm-related products. People around us are definitely more conscious about, say, the environment. Like, maybe they are consuming a lot of parcels, and they have a lot of waste that comes in from that. But the fact that if you are using, say, a plastic bottle, instead of a plastic bottle, you are using a glass bottle, or any of those things, people do understand it. I feel like it's that they do appreciate that you are taking that step. And of course, those glass bottles, like, at least for us, different things that we have, different types of glass bottles, a little mini bottle or a larger one. that goes out, or different, like brown paper bags, and people have really liked how they look. So they're like, okay, wow, this is such a pretty bottle. You always a lot of, and there are other brands who look at our brown packaging. Okay, oh, we would also really like to, switch to this. It looks nice. So it looks pleasing to the eye, and people are, after even like right now we talk about like Environment Day. We have like, okay, how to reuse our glass bottles is something that we would like a little video is going to go out soon. So it's just that people can reuse those little bottles and have similar, like I have someone who sent me a picture on that fueled the idea of having the video, is that they are buying little bottles from us every month to stay on reserve. And now their entire rack of spices just has bottles. They've just put, because they are plain bottles, you just remove the sticker, you can have these clear bottles out. Right. So I think in terms of like, okay, it has a slight cost that it increases, but right now you should not, at least personally, I feel like it does not like the customer revenue does not impact as much. In fact, it can be like a USP for you that you are conscious, and it is something that now people are switching to that, and it is the difference. So it's like time that we start thinking about it.
Correct. Wonderful. I personally also think that is, it sort of also sends the message across, like as you're saying, right, when you send them the glass bottles, they're actually reusing those bottles for other things. So it's also sending across the larger message, which is basically taking care of the environment and not really just using things and throwing them away. So I feel like that's wonderful. You also had mentioned about working with the community and the workers, and how like the way you spoke about it, it felt like y'all are really connected. So I would really be interested in knowing a little bit more about that. And also, like maybe it could be an overarching point or a question also, but like in terms of let's say I am a new business and I'm starting my my own e-commerce business, and I want to be very conscious about how my business is going to affect the nature. So let's say, depending, of course, I'm pretty sure business to business it keeps changing, but when you're procuring your raw materials for your products, like let's say you were talking about those the coconut wala wo, that you use for the thing for tying it and stuff like that. So like how much in advance, or how exactly do you approach the market for these kind of things, and then how do you sort of teach or help your the people who are working for you, or if you have a set of people who are working for you, how do you teach them how to use these things? Because it's also an additional responsibility and duty of yours to educate them, as you had mentioned, right? It falls upon you to tell them how to use, because I'm pretty sure they are used to the very traditional ways of the not so healthy ways of doing business. So educating them also is upon you. So I know that there's a lot of questions that I've thrown at you at this point, but I hope I've sort
of like at least try and get whatever I can.
Right.
But I feel like you said two things about, like what I got was like, first, how we are working with the community and the
correct. Yeah.
Plus how the community and people around us really, the different how we say.
Correct.
Right. So now, first off, the community that we work with, it's the entire farming community around us. We are based like our farm is based in a small village in Raipur. And we've always, now the community around us has always been like a major, like it's part of our family. It's like we've always, because it's since the 1980s that we've had the farm. So the people, the community around, always like they know me, they know my parents. So there's a sort of like, we are part of the village community, and we've always been there. So that is something that we've part of festivals and all of those things, and that really helps. Like when you are a part of the community,
right?
Those are the people that you're working with, at least from the farm. Right? And of course, now we've also started working with different keepers and different self-help groups even around us that are not in immediate contact, not always direct in contact with us. So now aspect about how we have been like you said asking traditional practices.
Correct.
I feel like working with or just interacting, like if you just around going to some rice fields during the rice planting season. Just if you go around the village itself, like, there are so many things to it, like just life lessons to different things that we like. At least living in the city, I could personally say that I've lived most of my life. Like, was in touch with the village, but in the city we really don't. So there are different things that I could at least understand and know from say with working with the community, and so that is something like you get a whole experience. There are different things even about farming and everything that we don't take because they have been with the soil for literally so long, so they know a lot of things. So that's something that we're working with them really, really well. And now the aspect about traditional that I would say really makes it tough. So they are more accustomed to traditional practices, and that being the key word, it is not that they've always been using say plastic or other things with the traditional alternatives. And I don't just mean about say plastic. I think traditional alternatives to farming, traditional things, all of those things have been it's been very rooted in the way they function. And they're much more conscious about the impacts. Like even if, for example, they are using something that we might not think was very conscious, they know what they are doing. Like they really know aspects of like, and something that we are not as connected.
Correct.
Like for example, I think like seasonal rainfall is something that comes as a season, but if the season gets haywire, we have climate change, we have season. Now, people like in the village would really worry about, okay, it is say 15 days now. From now, I have to harvest my rice, and now we have about a day. So they are very much more like they're much more conscious that okay, climate change is happening. There are something that's they know about all of those things, and it affects them. So they are more conscious. Right now, also things like using plastic, of course, has now become much more it is very common, but because there's no waste management system in place, they know that if we are generating this waste, it's going around our kitchen wells. Our cows are eating it, all of those things. Even so, like there are people using it, but that is something. So for us, the waste goes out of our house and we have nothing to do. Like I may be going a little haywire here, but I think that's something like I feel like if you're talking about like the village community, I think that's something like personally very close to have it. They are conscious in terms of all of those things, like and also things like now the seed banks are there in villages which have like different types of seeds, and they have their own like varieties and everything that they grow. Now, of course, due to commercial agriculture, maybe some of them might not be like as, but you can still find a lot of these farmers doing all this. It's not just about say using plastic or everything. It's about like okay, sustainable agriculture. You're using things that are like traditional, local to a particular area. We're not using the things that waste, all of those different things. That is something that comes from the cows and everything. All of that is really the things that are going back to the soil. So of course, that's why composting and everything comes into the picture. Where permaculture comes into the picture. If you are actually working with the soil, whatever you eat, you are making it to. So your eggshells and everything just go back into the soil. And that's how you have a complete circular thing. And that is something that has been at least practiced previously. Now, of course, some farmers might be going to that, but at least people who are working with us, they teach us more than we can. If we tell, okay, the chemical is on, they're like, okay, no, this was something that was used, we can, try. And that is something that, in terms of traditional, if you go towards traditional, the tradition of different things, like, for example, grinding out turmeric over stone is a practice. Now, of course, a lot of people go into, grinding it in, the mills and everything, but that is something that is still very, it's something that has always been there.
Correct.
So, it's just a seed, at least for us. It might be different for people working in, say, a different space, but for us, if we are working with the village community, it's all about, planting a seed, and then they will tell us things. And of course, there are little things, something that they are practicing, and then do we really need to do this? Will this work? Will this, hold and everything? That is something that happens for sure. But other than that, I feel like it is still like they teach us more than we need to, give to them. It's just that it's like a learning process. We bounce ideas of each other. For example, we have an issue with people like, it's like all of us together, and a lot of people will give us. So it's the village community and even people working with us at least. I feel like the traditional practices, as that you were saying, really help. And it's something that I think like we have to learn a lot more.
Right. I mean, yeah.
Connecting with
That's good. I actually didn't think of it from that angle because, I mean, obviously the village community would know a lot more than probably us, because we've been living in cities for so long. And we only, hear, or we used to hear stories like these from our grandmoms and stuff like that, we used to do things so differently and you all do things so differently. And, so much has changed because of, just because we've progressed in a certain way in, on this planet. But I mean, you did actually answer my question too. I was only asking from a point of view wherein, I wanted to understand where does where does that match happen, because you bring your ideas and they bring theirs. Is that like a very symbiotic relationship there, or is there friction? But
it really depends. I think that it really depends about what is at question. For example, I think like in any case, like for example, if there is something that has been practiced for a very long time, it being anything. So for you to really, like for example, if we are telling about a certain thing, it is just that okay. We'll be like, okay, will it work? I don't think it'll work. It's not something that, it works, at least in terms of farming, at least for us. It's just, if we're talking about certain things like, okay, let's do this. They'll be like, no. And then we're like, okay, let's just try it out on a little time. Then, so of course, it's not like we do have arguments. We do have like, okay, some things that, people working with us won't listen, at least like will not agree with.
Yeah.
But I feel it's just that over time, it does solve. So it's not like always a symbiotic relationship. Okay, they tell, okay, like let's do this. It's not always like that. Like in any workspace.
I don't think it is. Yeah. That I don't think.
Once you just test a little pilot of it, it can really work.
Correct. Yeah. I completely agree. I don't think there's any space that that can function properly without any friction. I think friction actually is important because there has to be a clash of ideas. So yeah, wonderful. I think but like if you had to again, I would say because I'm stressing on the fact of I'm stressing on the fact about this transition being a big thing because again I'm going to speak for myself, considering I know nothing about. I just want to start my business, or actually we can probably change the narrative a little bit. Maybe, we can make it similar to yours wherein, there is an existing business, but, we're trying to move to a sustainable, more sustainable practices. So if you just had to sum it down and list these things that, these could be things that you will either have to prepare for, or these are the things that these are the problems that you'll definitely run into, and these are some things that you should keep in mind. If you had to just list down like maybe 3-4 things, what would those be?
So I feel like if starting out, of course, like it is, like you said, an infliction at times. It is something that's already there. In our case, it was still more on the lines of like extending things that we've done previously, or for example, doing it in a different way per se. But
right.
Like environmentally conscious, because being a farm, it was always environmentally conscious.
Correct.
Natural and sustainable in all of those sense. But it's just that now if you're starting out, for example, with a new idea, with fiction, you will have people like, for example, like even if you are with the idea of, say, I want a certain thing, you can be sustainable and all those things. Now, if, for example, that can be even various different things, like, for example, somebody who's into sustainable fashion or beauty and all of these things, and like just talking about everything. There will be people who will just tell you that it's the easier way is to not go towards that, or maybe even whitewash, not really sustainable. So it's just that. So that is something that people around you, maybe business owners around you, who have been practicing for a really long time, that is the advice you might get. Because, like, for example, for us also, it's just that, like I was saying, plastics, and there are different things like that. Like, it's just that people would say that you should use that. And even people around you, like, working with you, like, okay, it's not working. Let's just not do this. Like, it's not the most important. Like for us, it's a farm to table brand. It goes okay, it's something that goes with us, goes to people. So it is not the most important. Like, that's something that people might say that it's not the most important to actually, be conscious of the environment and all of those things. It's not like it's not so important. But I feel like that is something that's like the challenge of the reluctance that you'll face, like, from everywhere, from people working with you and people who advise you, like, because you are going to looking for advices. That is something that you have to do.
True.
So, and also now, when you are facing that, you should take it with a pinch of salt. Like, they are coming in with some experience. They are coming in. So, like, now if they say something, you have to really think about your alternatives very well, like, in a very nice manner, such that you understand why they are saying these things, and then plan accordingly. So that is something, like, of course, you will have to face, whether it being okay now if there's someone who has a business to say, take part of it. That is something, like, for example, we use also, like, in our B2B thing, we are using a lot of boxes, because even boxes that you package it is waste that is being generated. So a lot of those big boxes we do use like all in our B2B, like we have a lot of cafes and restaurants. So we do put those in used boxes. So boxes that have, say, another brand name and all of those things that are being used, right? We do put our little labels and we do try to do that we are using those boxes. But that is also another thing that, people around you be like, let's have a standard box and let's just use that instead of having a used box with some random brands name. And it does make sense, like, branding is an important thing, but then again, the aspect of what you're standing for is another. So the major issue, I think, because now there are alternatives present, but the aspect of when you're transitioning, or even if you're starting out as somebody who is, say, I would just say more conscious, you will have those little barriers that you face. Now the other aspect, the second thing being, now once you've started and with teething issues, like we said, of course, about having different boxes, like the bottles breaking and things like that. Like, we move into sustainable agriculture. We are into beekeeping now. The first time, like, for example, when we did have an instance of the bees, not being very happy in our environment. So, but that didn't discourage us. We like, okay, we need more plants around us, and all of those things are important. Like, okay, we don't have flowers, for example, around us this season, so we should have things around. So there are issues like that. Like, of course, the first aspect might not be successful. Like, for example, I'm telling I use a glass bottle, like, it's completely cheap. Some person with another bigger bottle or something, it might not. So the aspect of, okay, there will be a lot of failures. Like I said, in the second bottle and it broke, and the third time it was nice. It happened only in one instance, like the second bottle breaking only happened once, but it did happen. Like, and there are other places also but then it was just like, okay, learning from that, moving on, and still trying to like, right now we just had a review on one of our online. We just had a review that didn't talk about the honey, they didn't talk about our product as much, but they talked about the box was packaged very well. It could, even if it is dropped a few times, so I feel like that was like a very nice review for me. I felt like, okay, at least I've gone into another. So it's just common sense, right? It's just that you will have a lot of reluctance. For me, I personally think people will be reluctant to work with you. Other people's advice will be, and you will have issues. It's not like a full straight road. You can, of course, take, you can listen to people who have, in that particular space, started in this conscious plan. And then learn, have your own path and learn along the way. I think that's what I would say. The transition, at least, is not easy, but it is the future. It's very important. And people will appreciate and realize it's your work.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with the last part, especially that, it is definitely, it's definitely the future. And, I also feel like people should, even though there's like the cost aspect, which again is a debate among many people, uh, which actually could be a session in itself. But, people should definitely start thinking about the climate as well, and not really stress much about the cost bit, right? Because the customers, also the people who you're doing it for, will appreciate it. That's wonderfully put. Right. So I think we're almost at time. And I also think that we've covered most of the topics that we wanted to talk about, and all the questions I think that I wanted to ask you, I have asked you those. But I also know for a fact that I could reach out to you anytime if I wanted to know a little bit more about Maticha especially. And I don't think we've got any questions. I just see we've got a few comments praising you and Maticha, which you rightly deserve. But no questions per se. So I think we're good. Any closing statements? Anything that you just wanted to talk about a little bit more about?
Just like if I had to say something, like, of course, if you're starting out, just be brave. And like if you're starting out, of course you have to be brave in like starting a new initiative and all of these things. But I think just if you are thinking about it, there's someone out here who's watching this, thinking about doing something, like maybe even in a better fashion than we have done it. I think it's just that take the step, and it's very important. Like, and you just as you said, the cost aspect. Like the only thing, maybe, like of course, how it's just how we look. Like you said, it can be a whole session. It's just how we look at cost.
Right.
Is it the short cost of, say, what we are inputting, the money we're putting in, or the cost that it has in the environment and everything, like the manifold effect that it's having? So it's just how we look at the cost, or how we look at how things are improving something. Like, of course, can be another whole session about like what is the real cost.
Right.
Plastic versus a glass bottle, or new things like sustainable agriculture versus chemical and other sorts of things. It's just the cost of this versus that can be a very long debate, and I think even by the looks of it, I think we know who, in today's world what is important and which alternative is something that we should do. So I think it was nice talking to you. I hope I did answer like a lot of the questions.
Yes, you did. You actually I wasn't even expecting to learn so much because I thought I knew quite a lot, but I clearly didn't. And it was there were some wonderful insights in there. And thank you so much for doing this for us. And a very quick message from me also to everybody who's watching, who wants to start out, with their own e-commerce venture. Please, I would very strongly encourage them to look at InstaMojo, because we also at this point are an e-commerce platform. Maticha and Ziba herself, they are on InstaMojo. They have been using InstaMojo for a while. And we are an e-commerce platform provider, and your website will come fully loaded with all the things to help you, scale your business further. So do give InstaMojo, do check it out. And thank you so much for doing this, Ziba. It was wonderful talking to you. I hope we get to do this soon again, sometime wherein you'll, enlighten us with more things.
Thank you. Thank you
so much.
Viewers also enjoyed. I'm just like, I hope viewers also.
Yeah. That's the hope.
Even if you're not a sustainable brand or it's just an individual watching, I think I hope you just take little steps and it just helped you in some way.
I'm sure it did. Thank you so much, Ziba. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.